That was definitely something I struggled with at first, and then I thought, well, it's got to be a way to do this. And I realized, well, there's no reason we can't do a little storefront. And the clock, you can even see it in the model if you look close, but there's
Yeah,
a
I see
clock
the
in
one
the...
on the top left.
Yes. So I thought if it's a storefront, when you dress a storefront, no matter what kind of store it is, there's usually some little props in the window, and you have go to a clothing store or go to any store. So, but Keith being the person that's kind of responsible for all the dressing, I didn't really have a strong opinion about what's in that window. I just knew we would need a little place for the clock. So I think he ended up making it, he got a nice neon in one, and he ended up making it like an umbrella store for a few years. And I think it changed a little bit over time, but they're basically little storefronts because Grand Central does have little stores all along it. So that was kind of why I didn't see it as being strange or unusual. So
talk about how the challenge of putting the giant clock, the Grand Central clock, from the center of Grand Central Station. It's an iconic.
Oh, yeah, that was quite a challenge. That was also, so originally, I guess the last set prior to that was the Brooklyn Bridge. And Brooklyn Bridge has a very kind of transparency to it that's wonderful with all the turnbuckles and stuff, but you see through it very clearly. And Eugene, I do remember this. He took a piece of the turnbuckle and an I-beam, and he made this small element that became the foreground shot for when you watch any of the shows when we had the Brooklyn Bridge. And it was a wonderful piece, and they shot through it as an opener and pushed through. And it really felt, because of the way it was set up, it felt like the other side of the bridge. It kind of helped complete this depth to the set, and I really loved that. And I thought we can't not have another foreground piece, something. And I knew that clock. I always felt the clock was a real icon in terms of Grand Central. Everyone knows they meet at the middle of Grand Central. It's the clock, and of course, clocks are always, wonderful elements anyway. It's a time, I liked that it marked the time, and I don't even know if people realize, but it really always was the true time, and there's something fun about that. But it was a struggle too to get them to shoot it. You have to remember there's that transparency of the turnbuckle for the Brooklyn Bridge, and that being used to things at SNL is why when you try to do something differently, there's often a considerable amount of resistance. The cameraman, Johnny Pinto, has been there for years. I'll never forget this either. He's on the boom, and he takes that opening shot. And he requested that I turn the clock upside down because it would be easier to shoot. And I remember being like crazy by that idea. I thought, haven't you been to Grand Central either? And part of me was like, I'm not like a real stickler for authenticity, but I said to him, it'd be like doing a Statue of Liberty, putting the flame upside down. It doesn't make sense to me. But it would have been easier for him to shoot. He wanted to pull. He said, you just turn the faces upside down. It's easy because the faces of the clock can easily be flipped. But it was the point of the detail that it would have been easy to take this shot and pull down off of it over the audience and into the set. I understand that, but it just wasn't. It wasn't going to happen, and I refused. And I think they all kind of realized that was the right thing to do, but sometimes we have ideas and we don't think them through, and I think that was one of those cases where they said, let's just turn it over.
But this isn't a clock you purchased.
The shop built it, and we have a woodworking guy that does a lot of wood details, and American Wood Column out in Brooklyn. It's kind of a dying art. But I went over there, Tommy Lupo, and that was tough too. It was this massive ball that they glued up for me and turned out of solid wood. It weighed so much. And in hindsight, I should have done it differently. I should have had one of my specialty prop guys like cast it and make it out of lighter plastic. But it is a solid wood ball that was then turned and then cleaned out, and then he turned it over to us. He did a beautiful job with most of it, but when he turned it over to us, it was so heavy that it was ridiculous, because he said he couldn't turn, when you turn wood, it's very heavy, but it's rotating at such a high speed, and he was afraid someone was going to get killed because it's, you have to carve it with precision and with a wood tool, and it can be a very dangerous thing. So he didn't want to take the center out of it because he thought it could collapse. So it came to the shop, and I was kind of like, I remember being really bent out of shape and thinking, that's not what I asked for. And the shop said, that's fine, don't worry, we'll fix it. And they took, drills, and they drilled all the holes, and they cut it out by hand, all the interior part. And then we had to solve how to make, how to make this curved face, because it's a custom piece of glass. And, especially the mechanics. In the real clock, I'm sure that there's a central clock piece with 4 armatures sticking out and a real timepiece. And at first, I really didn't know how I was going to solve that. But once again, my, Saturday night senses kicked in, and I just said, it should just be a cheap little, I bought the little clocks. They're like $5, and they have a little face, and you use them when you make your own little clock, and they're very cheap, but I figured at least it's a small, I was bothered by the shadow, which if you look, it's still there from the mechanism, but the mechanism is small, and it's literally, they're all separate little battery operated clocks that are like dirt cheap, and we just took the hands that come with them and we gently bend them, and every so often we have problems with them, but they're so cheap that I have like a drawer full of them if any of them ever give out. They're they're not the most precise pieces of timekeepers, but they do the job,